This video is being recorded on Sunday, August 7th, and it's going to be a quick preview look at the market setup for this week to come. So let's take a look at the charts here. So the past couple of weeks, the markets have been trading in a bit of a range. Most of the pairs that were previously trending in July have slowed down a bit. So let me start off with the euro pairs. So euro is still weak in the long term. It has been going down. For example, looking at euro USD, it has been stably going down on the weekly time frame. For the last 3 or 4 weeks, it has been retracing a little bit. So on this weekly view, applying the Ichimoku indicator, it looks like it's retracing towards the Tenkan-sen. So this next week, it could touch and still stay in a range, or it could get resisted and go down a little bit. But what's interesting is that if you count the past 9 candles from this past week, so the 9th candle is right here, the June 6th candle that formed. So after this week, the Tenkan-sen is going to move past this candle and take the next one, which means the midpoint, the high and low, is going to go down. You can see the Tenkan-sen is already pointing down, and it's gonna, even if the price does not break out, it's still going to go lower after this next week. And a simple trend line kind of sets up the same resistance point right here. So either this week or the next week, there could be a move in Euro USD. And if it continues the trend, it's most likely going to break the doji or the support and go down further. And applying some time analysis, we can see that the highs have been about 10 weeks apart. So there was a high here on March 28th, one on May 30th. And then if this pattern keeps getting extended, it looks like the previous week candle, August 1st, would have been the high. So it could go down this week. Same thing with the lows. These have been about 10 candles apart. So yeah, overall, it looks like this pair is still likely to go down. So let's look at another euro pair, euro AUD. So this one is not trending as much as euro USD, but the bias is still going downwards. As you can see, after the February sell-off, it's not really been able to break above the previous support, which is now resistance at 1.53. So if it breaks support, it could go down further. Euro CAD is also similar to Euro USD, since CAD and USD are tightly correlated together. It looks like it's been consolidating for the last 4 weeks, but if it breaks support, it has a chance to go down further. And Euro Swiss franc has also been strong, similar to the US dollar and CAD. We've had consecutive weeks of bearishness up until this past week that just ended. There was a slight rebound. So if it breaks support or support in any of the lower time frames, it could go down further. But right now the price is retracing a bit, and it could go back further, maybe up to 0.9967 or somewhere around there. Next is the pound pairs. I took a look at the pound pairs. Pound is a bit similar to euro. It's not as weak, but it's also been it's still been weak compared to the stronger currencies. So let's see, pound CAD this last week was doji candle, so it was resisted by the Tenkan-sen here, and there's a good chance it could go down further. Euro Swiss franc, This one is also been trading in a range, but biased towards the weaker side. As you can see from the last 3 candles, there has been wicks pointing upwards, meaning the buyers tried to push the price back up, but the selling power was too strong and they ended up close to where they started. Yeah, this one is interesting because if you zoom out, it broke one level of support, maybe near 1.173. So the prices had a hard time going back above that level. So if it continues to get sold off, eventually the buying power could dry out and it could go down further. Okay, so let's look at some of the dollar pairs. The dollar has been trending up in the last several weeks to months, but in the recent past, it has been correcting down a little bit. So dollar JPY, JPY is probably one of the weakest currencies right now because of their central bank's interest rates. But even so, last week there was some strong support shown around the 1.325 level or 132.5 level, and interacting with the weekly Ichimoku indicator, it's shown a bounce on the Tenkan Sen, and it did close above it. So there's still potential for it to rally back upwards, maybe to the previous resistance, or it could stay in a range in the upcoming weeks. But yeah, if it does keep rallying, there's maybe about 400 pips until the peak. So this could be have a potential setup in the coming weeks. And let's look at dollar Swiss franc. So this one is been correcting down for the last several weeks, ever since this big move back in the beginning of May. And I will say, so if you remember last week, I commented there was damage done by the sellers, so it was able to close the previous week into this support level, which was always strongly supported, as you can see by the wicks here. But the last week it closed into this area. This week the buyers had an answer and were able to push it up, negating the price, essentially resetting it back to the last week's opening price. And it is just barely above the Kijun Sen, so that's why this pair is essentially range right now. But if it does keep getting sold down and it closes next week below the Kijun Sen, you could see it go back to all the way back to the previous level breakout, which was 0.936. So there's several hundred pips, about 250 pips to go, if that is the trading target. And then another interesting pair I'll point out is Cad Jpy. So I was comparing this to dollar JPY. You can see the same bullish move up on the weekly chart. However, it's not as strong as dollar JPY. As you can see, there was support this week that ended up forming a pin bar. However, the close was just barely below the Tenkan Sen level, so it did technically close below the Tenkan Sen, which could set it up to retrace back to the Kijun Sen, which is about 590 pips lower. So it's interesting to compare dollar JPY and Cad Jpy. As you can see, the trend upwards is similar, but both are technically trading in a range right now on the daily time frame. If you just look at the price action, it has been in a range. So the question is if JPY pairs are going to break up or down. If it breaks up, dollar JPY would probably be the better buy, since dollar is stronger than CAD. But if JPYs break down, CAD JPY might be better to sell, since the weekly chart is more weak compared to the dollar JPY. And if you want to look at how dollar and CAD compare, you can look at dollar CAD. I'm not considering this pair for a trade, but just for analysis purposes, comparing these two currencies, you can see it's been pretty much trading in a range with a slight bias towards the upside if you follow this supported trend line. So it could go up or down, we're not really sure, but you may have to compare dollar and CAD to the other currencies to see where they go. So yeah, I guess in summary, the recent weeks have seen a bit slowdown in the moves. There's been news in the first week of August, so the market's probably taking some time to analyze and digest what the news is. There are some noteworthy economic news coming out this coming week. I think the US dollar, there's some news around that. The US is going to post CPI news this week, so that'll be one key thing the markets are waiting to react to. But otherwise, most markets are in a range or retracing, so there may not be any good setups to trade this week. Yeah, this past week there was a big move in the AUD pairs. There was some volatility around that. I think AUD JPY moved, yeah, like over 200 pips in both directions. So it went down over 200 pips and then bought back 200 pips against the JPY. But in the weekly time frame, it's still in a range. There's yeah, not a clear breakout in either direction, so we'll see. For me myself, I'm not eager to trade this coming week. I am attempting the FTMO challenge, but I'm also below the 5% profit target, so I don't think there's much of a chance for me to meet that in 2 days, which is when the challenge will expire for me on August 9th. So even if I take a free repeat, that's fine for me. I'll just wait until the markets are active again to start trading. But if you are trading, there could be some setups, particularly after the US CPI news come out, that you might consider watching out for.